Sometimes science fiction becomes accidental theology. I know this is not my normal kind of content, but I was raised Catholic and I have 2 philosophy degrees, so I ended up sort of adjacent to theology in a lot of ways. But particularly adjacent to this guy, John Sanders, who ended up being one of my professors as an undergrad. It happens, this book, The God Who Risks, is all about time. I ended up going to graduate school to study philosophy and physics, so I was really interested in concepts of time. And even though a big chunk of what we were discussing while we were working together was the idea that God doesn't know the future necessarily, the way that we studied that ended up having some serious crossover with some German folks that mattered to me a lot for reasons that I will explain in other videos. This is the only book that I ever broke by going to certain pages over and over. And these guys, George Lakoff and Johnson, Mark Johnson, talking about cognitive linguistics and embodied cognition. And although I didn't realize it until I hit the record button just a couple of seconds ago, embodied cognition laid the groundwork for the idea that maybe if you move through the world as a woman, or you move through the world as a person of color, you might have a different epistemology than somebody else in a different body in a different history. Sanders, through Gadamer, through Lakoff, through Johnson, through, say, Ruha Benjamin, give us an embodied epistemology that is historicized, that is postmodern in a way that is really healthy, that we really need, because we live in this post-truth world where, like, literally anything goes, and these people are starting to give us the constraints to wrap our philosophical heads around this post-truth world that we seem to be living in. I am aware of the level of pretension of the sentences that I just uttered in your general direction. Why am I bringing this up in the context of this science fiction book that I just made a couple of videos about? Because in this book, Children of Ruin by Adrian Tchaikovsky, there is an alien being that just eats and copies itself like Agent Smith in like Matrix 2 or 3 or whichever one. It just absorbs everything into itself and it starts turning the entire world into like a gray goo that is like itself. And in this book, one of my brother's favorite scenes in this book is the scene where someone contacts and communicates with this entity that perhaps it would be better if instead of absorbing everything you came in contact with, you could instead be in relationship with it. I know I'm moving through this very fast and I'm throwing lots of ideas at you, but part of what one does when studying theology, even in a hobbyist sort of at an arm's length distance kind of way like I did, is asking the question of like, if you were this omnipotent being that was timeless and eternal, or maybe not timeless, why would you create other consciousnesses? Because despite the fever dream of the capitalist who becomes Superman, it might just be better to live in community. Ecosystem and relationship might be a better model for part of what God is really like.